Hi, this is Adam.
And this is Jackie.
We're with So Wizard Podcast, and we are going to be covering fight movies together. Jackie, you have some interest and involvement in the fighting world?
I do. I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for about 10 years now. I've been doing Muay Thai for about 6.
All right. What was your idea to do fight movies? Because outside of Quentin Tarantino, I think it's your favorite genre.
Yeah. I mean, because Tarantino isn't necessarily a genre. But yes,
but I know you love everything Tarantino.
Yes, I do love everything Tarantino, but I also love fight movies. I would say that the quintessential fight movie is probably my favorite quote-unquote genre of movie.
Let's start by covering a synopsis. So the movie follows Billy Hope, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who really transformed for this one. I think after Nightcrawler, which is his previous movie, he got a whole new phase in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he, is kind of, I don't know, maybe not the definition of a method actor, but it really feels like he was, because the transformation from Nightcrawler to Southpaw was just incredible. And
as we noticed, it's not just the physical transformation. Obviously, he was hitting the gym and had good training and nutrition. But
sure, yeah.
You were talking about his boxing technique.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like when I was watching the training montages, because there were a couple, little ones throughout the movie, and then there was the big one before the major fight at the end. But, I mean, that kind of pad work you can't fake when he was working with the trainer and stuff. Not Forrest Whitaker, but there was another guy that he was working, doing some pad work with. And that is definitely something that takes time to, even get somewhat good at. And he definitely looked like he knew his way around a punching bag and accuracy bag and speed bag and all that stuff. That kind of stuff takes time. And it looked like his footwork and stuff, everything looked like, I don't know, he looked like he had pretty good form to me.
He really did look like he knew what he was doing. It was not stuntmen.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So after all that, clearly Southpaw is not an underdog story. Billy Hope is on top of the world. He's the light heavyweight champion of the world. He gets that in the opening scene. Due to personal tragedy, some poor decision-making on his part, he loses everything. His life shatters around him. It's a pretty sad movie as far as fight movies go.
Yeah, rewatching it, because now we've seen it, I think, 3 times?
3 or 4.
But yeah, I mean, even when you watch it a couple of times over and you know the things that are going to happen, you know the major beats of the story, it still is very tense because you know what's going to happen, and you know that it's just going to get worse and worse and worse for this guy before it gets better.
So Jake Gyllenhaal as Billy Hope is surrounded by a really talented cast. Rachel McAdams as his wife Maureen, and their daughter Una Lawrence, I hope I'm saying that right, plays Leela, who's a smarter for her age, kind of typical movie daughter you've seen before, but she really has a lot of grounding to do in this movie. 50 Cent, who was, his manager, his booking agent? I'm not really sure how that works.
I would say his manager.
Now, I personally hate 50 Cent. I think he's awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why he kind of worked in this role, because he was kind of a sleazebag. He wasn't.
Well, I don't know if 50 Cent himself is a scumbag or something.
No, I'm not saying that. It just
personally.
Because of my personal dislike for him, disliking this character was all the more easy.
Right. I mean, even if you didn't know who 50 Cent was at all, and you saw this movie, he did a good job playing
his role.
Piece of shit. Yeah.
And I think the real standout, aside from Gyllenhaal, was Forrest Whitaker. Who plays his later trainer, confidant, friend, kind of the guy he needs.
Yeah.
We were talking about it before, where Forrest Whitaker is this really subtle actor, or as recognizable as he is, and he really blends into his roles, and no matter how big the role gets,
he's not Forrest Whitaker playing Forrest Whitaker in this boxing movie. It's not Sam Jackson's great and everything, but a lot of times Samuel L. Jackson does Samuel L. Jackson's thing.
I don't think he ever not is Samuel L. Jackson at this point.
Well, in The Kingsman he played something different.
Well,
you know what I mean? It was different. But overall, when you generally see him in something, he's Sam Jackson in he's Sam Jackson as Sam Jackson in Pulp Fiction. But I mean, he's great and everything. I'm not saying that he's not good, obviously. But yeah, no, Forrest Whitaker isn't just I have this one thing that I do. He kind of just molds into whatever he's doing pretty seamlessly, I think.
Sure, absolutely. So Billy Hope, personal tragedy, loses everything. It's a comeback story. It's a story of determination. It's a story more of character than of actually fighting. Directed by Antoine Fuqua, Training Day, Shooter, Magnificent Seven remake, which was serviceable. Very interestingly, he's making a Muhammad Ali documentary, which is supposed to come out later this year. After seeing what he did with Southpaw, I'm definitely curious.
Yeah, me too.
And it was written by Kurt Sutter, who has TV fame with The Shield and Sons of Anarchy, and we won't get into The Bastard Executioner because that was...
bad.
As bad as this movie is good, we can say. So we talked a little bit about Gyllenhaal's transformation, Gyllenhaal putting in the work. What did you think of the overall fight choreography being part of the fighting world?
Oh, I thought the fight choreography was pretty great. I wouldn't be surprised if some people accidentally took legitimate shots in the face and body, doing those scenes because it really felt real. It looked real. I mean, you could fool me and say, if I didn't know any better, oh, that was a real fight.
I wish boxing in real life was as interesting as they make it in movies, especially movies like this where it's real hard-hitting, it's got a soundtrack, it's fast-paced.
Because boxing is very interesting, especially if you are, you have a keen eye and you know what's going on. Boxing can
if you know what's going on.
It goes on pretty long. I mean, I'm more of a fan of MMA than of boxing, but overall, if I had to choose between, say, watching a football game and a boxing match, I'd absolutely choose boxing match.
I would too. I'm just saying I've seen some real life heavyweight bouts that
are not great, right?
Sluggish.
Sure.
I'm sure those guys could destroy me. I'm not saying that, but it was not a great piece of entertainment. So we covered some of the training, we covered a lot of the boxing, covered a lot of the choreography. What did you think about the script?
I thought the script was great. I thought that it definitely felt like you were watching something actually unfold. You really did. You felt like everything and the decisions that this guy were making, you could make the jump to say, this actually happened to somebody, right? They're making a documentary. It's not just a script that somebody wrote. This actually happened to somebody.
I did like how Billy Hope felt rounded. They go into his past, and you can tell he might not be the smartest guy, but he's there, he's heart, without it being such a movie trope where he's all heart and he's so well-meaning. He is a flawed character.
Well, it kind of all falls into a category of, the quote-unquote fighter, as it were in movies and TV. I feel like there is kind of a caricature of fighters that they're not all that bright and that they're, they do have a lot of heart and they're tough and they're, explosive and angry and all of this. And I want to be careful with how I'm saying these things because I know a lot of fighters personally, both professional and amateur, and, people that do it as a hobby. And I know that that is definitely not the case. There are a ton of fighters from all walks of life. So I just want to, I always feel like there's kind of a caricature and I kind of feel bad about that. They get, all fighters aren't the same person. But for all intents and purposes, this movie had to have its thing where, Billy is an explosive, angry guy because a lot of that was beginning of that domino effect, how everything kind of fell apart for him. If it weren't for his bad, explosive attitude, that, the horrible tragedy, regarding his wife wouldn't have happened, period.
If he was a completely well put together guy, maybe he wouldn't have been the best fighter, but even if he was, maybe there would have been no adversity. There's no story to tell.
Right, exactly. There's no story to tell if he didn't have that, that...
What did you think about the villain, for lack of a better term? Miguel Gomez played Miguel Magic Escobar. He was kind of the guy who was goading him the whole time. He had to have the big final fight.
Oh, yeah.
With him.
Well, I mean, really, another good thing about this movie that could be said is that his character, he really wasn't an evil guy. The whole time it was really his, members of his entourage, his hangers-on, if you will, that kind of incited this whole thing. And nobody really meant for that original,
inciting incident.
Inciting incident, right? I don't want to, be too heavy on the spoilers, but, that inciting incident, it wasn't him directly, and he's not an evil guy. All he's trying to do is sell a fight. He's trying to get, a fight with Billy because he feels like it'll, make his career jump or whatever. He'll have a career jump if he does this, which is something that's pretty common in the fight world. Obviously, that's how you get more work. You sell fights.
I actually really like that aspect of it. One, because as far as movie goes, the villain is always more interesting when he's a character, not just a two-dimensional, I'm a villain for the sake of villain. And two, also that in the fight world, everyone has their own story. No one's the villain in the story. They all want their own career. They all want their own path. And this guy was doing exactly that. There was even times in the movie where he tells Billy, I'm just here to sell a fight. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't want it to go down this way.
Yeah, there was one specific time when he actually said, I think, pretty much almost that verbatim, he said, look, it's just business.
There was also some times where he went the other way. Where maybe he wasn't the even-keeled guy, but he is still a fighter. He is still trying to get a rise out of his opponent. He's trying to throw him off his game.
And in the context of the movie, he is supposed to be the guy you're rooting against, so you can't love the guy.
I thought he did a very good job in the role.
Yeah, he did.
A lot more well-rounded than a lot of fight movies give the opposing boxer. I think we covered just about everything there is to cover. Obviously, you were into this movie. What are your closing thoughts on Southpaw?
Closing thoughts on Southpaw, it has a great cast with great acting. It had a great soundtrack. I feel like it was true to the fight world and community, at least as I know it to be. I feel like, overall everything, it felt real. I really didn't... Honestly, if I had... I actually can't think of a critique of this movie because I was trying to think of one while we were talking here, and I actually can't think of one thing I don't like about this movie. I guess if I had to come up with something, I would say that as I mentioned before, that typical movie trope of like the fighter being this explosive, that typical, we all know, we've all seen it before, but really it wasn't a crime.
No, definitely not. I'm going to have to agree with you.
And it's hard for me to say that because there's not a lot of movies that I like.
No, you're a pretty harsh critic on movies. I've shown you a lot of movies that I'm a big fan of that did not fly. I wouldn't go that far.
They're not.
Okay, well, there you have it. This is Adam.
And this is Jackie.
We're So Wizard Podcast. Next time, my vote is we cover Creed. They came in around the same time, and we had a debate over which one we liked more.
Which one was better, yeah.
So we'll do that next time. Tune in. Thank you.